Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Kofi. You guys are keeping me alive. It was that time of the year again in the Pizzaplex. The so-called summer drought. There were no events. Easter was over, Christmas was still half a year away, Halloween too. Well, if Christians were too lazy to invent enough holidays for the modern generation, it was up to corporations to do that. Ah yes, poor billion-dollar companies having to put actual effort into getting people's money in summer with events. Bond's Burgers had their Barnyard event, adding a huge amount of previously time-limited burgers from the past back on the menu. Happy's Humble had the Salmon Night event, where their salmon nuggets were discounted by 25% after 6 PM. And what did Fazbear's Pizza have? The Beach Bounce Summer Festival events. What started as a last-minute solution had become their third biggest sales event of the year, only being beaten by Christmas and Halloween. Every year the Pizzaplex would elect 1 or 2 robots to be the primary event initiative. Last year it were Monty and Roxy, the theme being girl power versus boyhood, which added a few fun arcade games both to Roxy Raceway and Monty Golf, the scores of which would be added together and be displayed everywhere at the Plex to see who currently had the bigger high score, Roxy's girl power or Monty's boyhood. And 2 new limited time pizzas were sold, the Monty Boy Party and the Roxy Girls Night Pizza. In truth, they were simple margarita pizzas with different colored bell peppers. Roxy's used red peppers and Monty's green ones, but it worked. It had been their best event yet. The problem now was that the animatronic, who was now on the chopping block for the Beach Bounce event, was the daycare attendant. The higher-ups in charge of the Pizzaplex were sitting in a room with 2 additional members from staff. Brian Chesterberg Crawford, lead of the day shift guards, being only here as a representative of Afton Robotics, as his father was the company's current CEO. And Kevin, on-duty engineer and family man. He was really here only to give his down-to-earth opinion on what the others came up with, as Kevin cared very much about his son and wife. We could... no. How about... nah. This had been going on for an hour. Any pretense of this being a serious meeting gone, as no one knew what to do with it. Only after giving keywords to each other, a short exchange began. Sun and moon are themed after night and day. They are the daycare attendant, so we need to make sure he gets out of the daycare. He needs to be in front and center. And then, someone slammed their fist on the table before jumping up. His brain was still working through the idea, so he talked a little strained as he desperately tried to formulate his pitch. Dreams! Sun is a nice dream, moon is a bad dream. We borrow the cloud aesthetic from our Valentine's events and the spooky decoration from the Halloween event. Cut the Plex in half. One spooky half and the other is pastel, bright and pink. I don't know. Sorry. Brian raised a finger. Keep going, buddy. This is gold. We give children and adults yellow or blue armbands. Depending on which they choose, they get 20% off on anything their side represents? It sounded more like a question rather than a convincing pitch, but this incentivizes people to come in pairs. You know, people who usually come alone would then bring someone else to double the profit and like share the 20% off, and you know, you have like one that is day, one is night. I mean, one is a nightmare, one is a dream. Is that good? After nobody had another idea, this beach bounce event was called Sun and Moon's Dream Warriors, and it soon would begin. When you arrived at the Pizzaplex, the constructions for the event were going heavy. You had been off work for a couple of days, so you were completely taken aback. You were one of the daycare attendant's wranglers, meaning you had been specifically selected to help keep the animatronic from acting weird, by distracting the kids from him, or just entertaining the animatronic so he would fulfill his purpose properly. Extra for this, they had given you a cute pink fairy costume and makeup that was themed both after the sun and the moon. Your role was Eclipsa, the fairy of day and night. Toddlers loved that shit. You had already been warned that during the event the daycare attendant would be placed on the Glamrock stage, so for the time being you'd be alone with 2 staff bots in the daycare, once the event was actually going. You didn't mind, of course, after all the Pizzaplex paid better than any other old daycare. And thanks to the large separation between parent and daycare, you had to deal with far less Karens and overprotective fathers. Despite the Plex being closed right now, you had been looking forward to today. After all, you were still paid for your attendance. You'd just be chilling in the daycare, alone. Maybe you could finally finish that book you had been reading for months now. Always something happened and you just could never get to the end. The daycare would be spared from the event, of course, taking away an entire attraction space from the dream half of the event, but that was okay, because the most visited attraction of the Pizzaplex, Fazbear, was still on the dream side, so it sort of balanced out. You stepped over some construction equipment into the daycare. The place lay dark and abandoned. As in, quite literally dark. All lights were off. You sighed. You had enough training to know that this meant 2 things. For one, the emergency generators were out of fuel, and 2, Moon would now be on the prowl. The other half of the daycare attendant was usually kept offline, only allowed to be activated on certain occasions or by accident. The problem was that Moon was frightening the younger children. Due to his aggressive, protective nature and almost desperate need to fulfill a nap time that never was properly installed into his brain, making him think that any time he was active was, in fact, nap time. From the daycare lobby, you looked at the play area. The robot was sitting in the cuddle area, sorting the stuffed toys. The machine had a random number generator on which he would desire to reorganize certain aspects of the daycare. This was to keep the machine busy during downtimes. All animatronics in the Pizzaplex had these randomly generated desires, just so they would seemingly act more organic. For example, if the generator told Freddy, "Visit Fazbear," he would go there, stand around, awaiting input, and if not received, would eventually go somewhere else. It worked quite well. You tapped your cheeks to hype yourself up. Of course you weren't in costume for this. And didn't even have your makeup on. So you wondered how the machine would react to your presence. After a long, drawn-out yawn and a sip from your coffee thermos can, you deposited your stuff in the lobby's employee safe before sliding down to the daycare play area. Moon heard the noise of someone crashing into the ball pit. His head jerked. and tilted upside down. Getting on all fours, he began crawling towards the noise. He squatted down next to the ball pit entrance, turning on the lights on his eyes, like a searchlight. There was no movement in the balls. His eyes narrowed. Was someone playing a prank on him? Meanwhile, you grinned. It was difficult to keep your movements to an absolute minimum. Well, yes, someone was playing a prank on him, just not something that he was thinking. For a moment, his spotlight hovered right above you, your eyes focusing on him. And just as he looked away, you jumped up, scaring the robot. He screeched like a scratched music disc and fell backwards. You laughed as you heard the loud thud. And quickly the robot got up.
Yeah, funny you little rule breaker.
He grabbed you by the shoulders.
I will ban you from my daycare.
You can't, you said smugly. His face spun 3 times before he responded.
Why are you acting so smug?
I'm an employee. The robot began to vibrate angrily, his face now coming threateningly close to yours. His eyes turned blue to scan you.
Employee ID confirmed.
He then sighed dramatically and stepped away, disappointed.
Oh, Eclipse site's terrible.
You deadpanned. Kevin must have put your character into the machine as your real name. What a dick.
There are no little ones to punish.
Yeah, why is it dark here anyways? You ignored the robot's lament, which earned you an evil glare. Just kidding, you said as you did down next to the sulking robot.
It's so quiet here. No one tells me what's going on. Ever.
So Moon really didn't know that he was being purposefully suppressed. Only really ever let out during night to assist the night guards during blackouts. Of course, you tried telling him many times why, but thanks to his programming he would get the message and automatically delete it. In general, you had a comforting nature, so you really felt for him. You scratched your left cheek and thought.
And then, when I try to leave to seek out the night guards, I get a face full of light. I don't know what's going on anymore. It's so weird.
Well, we are preparing an event, you admitted.
Oh? Do tell.
The Sun and Moon Dream Warriors event. It's part of Beach Bounce. Happily, the robot jumped up. But you won't participate. His shoulders slumped down again. It's too bright, and you'll be on stage, where everyone will see you. The robot took a step back, sitting once again down next to you, folding his hands in his lap.
I see. Obviously the spotlight will shut me down. But this still makes me happy.
You huffed, surprised.
I'm gonna be on stage, even though I'll be Sun.
The teeth of the endoskeleton quivered and chattered, making him produce a rhythmic clattering noise as he spoke.
I'm finally a glam rock. Yes. People will pay attention to me.
Technically he wasn't a glam rock, but he was so happy and you didn't have the heart to tell him. Your face will be painted black. You'll get a dark orange costume, and design-wise we will combine your 2 personalities into a sort of eclipse kind of thing. You know, for the... Mockingly you raise both hands to mimic quotation marks. Lore. It gets all the teens really interested when you do give them the lore finger.
I'm not okay with this.
You chuckled. Thought so. You're probably glad you're gonna be offline then. The animatronic rubbed his hands together.
But regardless, this is exciting, nonetheless. But this also means I won't be seeing you, right? You can't be on stage with us.
Well, someone needs to take care of the cats. The robot twisted on the spot, but with his speed, his hands missed your shoulders and instead both grabbed and pushed against your chest. Taken off guard, you fell backwards. The robot, now on top of you. It made you blush as you felt his long, slender fingers dig into your flesh. Hard.
Please promise me you'll make the little brats have a good nap time.
Your heart jumped a little. This position had awakened something in you. You started inhaling and exhaling through your mouth to get more air. The robot was putting his weight on you, making it hard to breathe. Yeah, I promise. This was so surreal. His head spun excitedly.
You know what's weird? I actually believe you, Eclipser.
You bit your lower lip so hard you almost drew blood before saying, praise me more, please. He blinked, before looking around a little confused.
You draw pretty pictures, and you keep the play area always super tidy. Have to do less work. Have to worry less about them making a mess.
You surprised a sigh. That's good enough. You muttered before leaning your head upwards, kissing the robot's mouth.
Yow, wow, wow!
He shouted. He leaned a little away. His emotional calculation was overflowing. Moon's internal fans picking up the pace, making him sound like a badly ventilated gaming computer.
Zow! 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 Yow, wow, wow!
Did you just break him? After a couple of seconds, his hands took hold of his spinning head, bringing it to a stop.
Why did you kiss me?
He said. He sounded offended, but he really wasn't. I don't know, I just felt like the mood was appropriate. The animatronic blinked.
How'd I make you kiss me more?
Your mouth twisted into a horny grin. Okay, just let me unbutton my shirt and I explain it step by step.